Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door NetAdmin. Last week, I talked a little bit about some of the things that need to be kept in mind when you're designing servers. Today, I'm going to walk you through the process of actually specifying all the bits and pieces that go into a server. Just as a quick recap, I'm going to be working with Dell servers on this occasion. I'm going to be using the partner website to specify all the bits and pieces. So if you're going through the consumer version of the Dell website, you will not have all of these options. It will not look the same. But I'm showing this to you so that you get a good idea of the level of granularity and all the various options that are available if you have somebody who is speccing out a server fully. The client servers that I'm going to be speccing require a minimum of 102 gigabytes of RAM. Did I just say 102? I meant 192. 192 gigs of RAM minimum per server. It also requires a minimum of 64 threads per server, which is 32 cores per server. I am going to spec this as a 2-socket server, so each server will have 2 CPUs. To get to 32 cores, I'm going to need 2 CPUs of 16 cores each to make up 64 threads. And in a failover cluster, where I am expecting significant growth, you can consider this as one server to cover the needs for today, one server to cover the needs for tomorrow, quote unquote tomorrow, in practicality the next 5 years of growth. And the third server is only there to provide redundancy. We're not counting on using its resources at all. It's just there as a backup, as an online backup to run everything if something else fails and a server gets taken out of the picture. So these are the specs that we need to look at making sure that we hit. 64 threads per server, minimum of 192 gigs of RAM per server. We also do not need any disk space except to install Windows in order to boot the server. All of the storage for this client is on a separate NAS, a separate storage appliance. So we're going to need 10 gigabit connectivity to connect to the storage at speed. And then we'll need some 10 gigabit connectivity for virtual machines to use. And we'll have some management connections that are probably going to be running at 1 gigabit because that's what comes on board on a Dell server. Got all that? It's okay if you haven't. We'll go through it again. But let's jump right into looking at the form. Follow me. All right, I'm on the partner website here for Dell. I've already created a new solution. I've titled it very informatively New Server. I also like to include the month and year so that I can distinguish multiple solutions for the same customer. I'm going to start off by saying that for the specs that I've already mentioned, I've already decided that I'm going to want an R660XS. So I'm just going to search for that here, R660XS. All right. Out of the choices that we have here, there are some that start with PE for Power Edge. These typically are either pre-made builds or they're just tailor-made with extra promotions on them. Typically speaking, any extra promotions will be dealt with by our Dell representatives when they go and actually quote the solution out. So for building this and just determining a parts list, I'll typically go with the America's version, which is just your generic server. Add that to the solution, and then I'm going to configure it. Brilliant. I'm going to go through this in exactly the same way that I would typically go through it, just starting from the top, going all the way to the bottom. This is fine. Trusted platform module, I do want 2.0. That's good. Chassis configuration, I don't need any storage, like I said, but I do need it to be the 2 CPU variant. Change that chassis configuration. Boom, there we go. Because you can choose a lot of different configurations. And I don't need any of them. Okay, processor. I did say I need at least 16 cores per CPU, so I'm starting by just looking at the number of cores and number of threads. I'm not going to look at anything silver. It doesn't include the performance that I need. I need gold or higher. That's all of these. 8 cores, 16 cores, okay. It's a possibility, but it's only running at 2 gigahertz. That's slower than I would like to see. We've got a 2.8 and we've got a 2.5. This is a Generation 4 CPU. This is a Generation 5 CPU. And it has the higher performance. That makes it the one that I'm going to spec. Okay. There we go. Additional processor will always be the same one. You cannot have dissimilar processors. Thermal's good. Memory configuration type is fine. Type and speed. Again, I only have one choice. It's fine. Capacity. All right. I need at least 192 gigs of RAM per server. Split that in two because it has to be the same per CPU. That's 96 gigs per CPU. And if I want a nearly balanced configuration, if it was a 128 or 256, I could probably do it as a fully balanced. But for this, I need a nearly balanced configuration, so that's going to be 6 sticks of 16 gigs per CPU, which means I want 12 16 gig sticks total to make 192 gigs of RAM in the server. So let's add that. There we go. There we are. Okay, 12 16 gigs. It's nice that it's single rank instead of dual rank. It's a little bit better performance. Diskless configuration, yeah, no controller, no hard drives, that's good. Not going to have any of that. I'd like performance, please and thank you, because these are going to be running a lot of virtual machines. Advanced system configurations, these are fine. I would like to have fresh air cooling, but it's not compatible with what I'm going to be speccing, so I'm not going to bother in this case. Neither is Energy Star, unfortunately. Fans, standard is good. Power supply. This is fault-tolerant redundant, which means it requires both power supplies online in order to run at full performance. I prefer fully redundant, so that if I lose a power supply, I'm not losing any performance. It doesn't have to throttle down. So there we go. Fully redundant, 800 watts. I'll typically choose the least wattage I can get away with. Yeah, 2 NEMA 515 to C13 wall plugs is fine. PCIe riser, yeah, I'd like a couple of extra slots. I don't need a 16 running at Gen 5. I don't need one with MX because that's a Dell-specific networking thing. But you'll see that it does come with dual 1 gig ports. Okay. Oh, an OCP. No, I need at least a quad 10 gig because I'm going to need 2 10 gig NICs for the set that runs the virtual machine networking, and I need at least 2 more interfaces for iSCSI to the NAS. So that means I need one of these 2. And the switch I'm going to be interfacing with has 10G base T connections rather than SFP connections. So that's what I need there. There we go. I don't need any additional network cards. Don't need fiber channel. Don't need any of that. Bezel, I prefer the LCD bezel so I have additional diagnostics on walking into the server room and can see what's happening. I am going to need a BOSS. This is what I'm going to need to boot the server. I will always choose a RAID 1 configuration, but I don't need almost a full terabyte just for Windows. So a 480 gig is sufficient for Windows and for running a domain controller, because domain controllers are good to put on the BOSS rather than in the NAS storage itself. Don't need optics and cables. Operating system, I'm going to need 2022 data center, 16 core. I don't need it with reassign. There we go. And I'm choosing data center because of the number of virtual machines that I am running in the cluster. OS Media Kit, yeah, the downloadable one is fine. Whatever, I don't need a downgrade with DVD media. I don't need additional virtual machines. Data center includes unlimited, but this is only a 16 core license, and I have 2 CPUs of 16 cores each. So I'm going to need an additional 16 core license. There we go. I don't need SQL Server. CALs I've already got. Embedded Systems Management. I want my iDRAC Enterprise, please and thank you. I do not need data center. Server secured component verification I will keep, because that allows me to verify that the hardware has not been tampered with in transit. No quick sync. These options are all fine. I want it with a cable management arm, please and thank you. Server accessories. There's my optional serial card. Yes, please. There we go. And an internal USB I will go with. I always like to have... I have actually used internal USB cards to connect into a server where all of the external cards were broken. So the more ports I have available, the more options it gives me in an emergency. I don't need short drive shipping. Well, these both have short drive shipping, but I definitely don't need a multi-pack. Fine. Yeah, don't need any of this stuff. I do not need infrastructure deployment services. Thank you very much. Service. Yeah, it comes with basic next business day for 3 years. That's just what comes with the server, and then you upgrade it. I do want pro support because I want to be able to get to support on the weekends. Next business day for on-site, that's fine. We typically spec our servers with a 5-year duration because that makes a good support cycle. And the jump in cost from 5 years to 7 years is pretty high. It's higher than going from 3 to 5. Going from 5 to 7 is a bigger jump. I don't need to keep your hard drive because the hard drives in this case are just the BOSS cards for Windows. And no, I don't have infrastructure deployment. I want none. There we go. Anything I want in here? No. Okay. So that pretty much covers choosing the options. Then I scroll back up to the top here. Aha! Current hardware configuration exceeds power supply units for wattage for redundancy, and my BOSS and the internal USB cannot coexist. Okay, fine. So first, the power supply, 800 watts is not enough. So let's kick this up to the next one, which is 1100. This is the fault tolerant redundant. This is DC. So yeah, this is the one I'm gonna need. Cool. There we go. And then it was server accessories. There we go. Internal USB is not compatible when you're running the BOSS. It uses the same PCIe lanes. Okay. Scroll back to the top. Everything looks good. Cool. Let's validate it explicitly. Yep. All right. And then I can hit save. And once you hit save, Then it will actually show you the cost of all the options. This, as a top line list price cost, is rather misleading. This does not include any of the discounts that Dell would offer you on their website. It does not include any discounts that you might get from talking with a Dell representative who might be able to give you additional discounts for bringing in new business or additional business. This is just a top line list price. Don't let it scare you. It's not what you're going to pay for it. But scrolling down, checking all the bits and pieces. Windows licenses for data center are stupidly expensive. Stupidly expensive. But then data center includes the ability to run as many Windows virtual machines on it as you like with no additional licensing. So they get their money from you on the front side of it. But scrolling down, I will just briefly demonstrate the difference in price between 5 years and 7 years. Important to note, when you change any item, all the prices go away until you hit update price. And then you scroll back down, it was 7,000 something, all the way down, there we go. Now it's 12,000 something. So we've added an additional $5,000 of cost by increasing it to 7 years. 5 years is a very good sweet spot in terms of making sure your investment is used for a reasonable duration without paying extra costs and laboring on with hardware that is perhaps getting a little long in the tooth, at least in my experience. But that basically covers going through all the bits and pieces. Power cords is one to pay attention to every now and then. Sometimes it'll give you C13 to C14 cables, which works fine if you're in a data center that has C14 plugs, but I don't, so NEMA 515 is good. And if I'm using a bunch of terms that are not familiar to you, you can look it up. That information is out there, and you can take a look at that for yourself as well. But yeah, this is basically everything I expect to see. No, I don't need any of those. That's good. And I will, typically speaking, scroll through this quite a few times. This is one of my favorite things. The optional serial card is free. You can get it for absolutely free. You can also get the internal USB card absolutely free. Even at this inflated list price, you can get it for free. It's good times. No, that's it. Like I was saying, I will typically scroll through this multiple times to be sure I've got all the right options before it goes off. But once you've got all those options, cool. You can just send this solution number off to Dell and it'll be good. And that's basically it. Just like that. And just like that, we're done. We've gone through the entire list, top to bottom. We've gone through CPUs, we've gone through RAM, we've gone through network, we've gone through accessories, we've gone through support options, the whole smash. And now we've put it into a solution and we're ready to send it off to a rep and get it quoted out to find out if there's any discounts that can be offered and get an actual price so that we can quote it to our customer accordingly. So I hope you found that interesting, fascinating, informative maybe. I could hope for all of those things. But for now, that's all I have for you today. I am your next door NetAdmin. Thanks for joining me.